Okay, now we're doing the fitment of the rear motor mount. Got the cross member in place, and this is the mount. We just got it held in place, and you can see it allows an opening for the motor cooling steel and for the encoder wiring. But what we're working on now is we're going to have a plate that goes between that cross member, and we'll match the bottom of this, and between these two is a 1-inch shock mount. Actually, there's two of them, and so the one plate's bolted to the cross member and the shock mounts are bolted to it, and then the shock mounts are bolted to the bottom of the rear motor piece, and then it of course is bolted to the motor. So that's what we're doing right now, doing all of the alignment and everything, and then once that's done we'll paint these pieces, and then we'll be ready for the final installation. Well, here's the rear motor mount fit in place. See if we can get a better view of it this way. You can see the shock mounts, the plate, so forth. So now pull it back out, and it'll need to be painted. Then we're going to pull the motor back out and install the coupler and the flywheel and the clutch. And then we also need to finish the component board. We need to put our side panels on. We measured those not long ago, so we know the size, and so then we're going to drill and tap the component board for mounting those side panels. We'll do the wiring of the few components that are on the board, so that that's all done, so that when it's in place like this, it's just easier. We have room between the board, so we could still get back there and do things if we needed to, but if you do things in a certain sequence, it's just easier, and that's what we're looking for. Don't need to make life any harder than it already is. So anyway, that's next. We have a lot of videos where we show the installation of the coupler, the adapter, flywheel, clutch, all that. So we're not even going to bother with doing that in this particular series, but suffice to say that you can check out some of our other videos and see that entire process. What comes to mind at this point to me always is, what you get, for what you see. I remember being, a teenager and working on an engine, and you think, once you strip the engine down, you take off the, the alternator and the power steering and the air conditioning and all the externals, and you strip it down to where it's just the block, just a long block, and you think this is what powers this huge car or truck. It's really not that big once you strip off all the accessories. Well, the same thing's true for the electric motor. This AC50 is a great little motor, and it's not very big. I forget the dimensions. Hang on. It's the case is 14 inches long, and it's 9 inches in diameter. And so this packs a lot of punch in a very small package. And just like the internal combustion engine, there are, you know, items that go along with this. This does not power the car by itself. So as you have a fuel tank, you have, you know, a battery for this. Instead of a, you know, carburation and injectors and all that, you have an inverter or a controller. And so there are, as you can see right here, you know, we've got some accessory items that are required for this to do what you want it to do and to get the end result that's desired. But it's still amazing that in the setup that we're using this, 130 volt, I think it's going to be 120, what is it, 120 something. I have to do the math. If I do the math real quick, I can give you the nominal voltage. So 35 cells times 3.3. So it's 116 volts, let's say, nominal. And so that's low voltage. You know, when you figure there's cars now coming out where they're going to be having 700-800 volts. You know, there's a lot of them over 400 volts. And I don't think there's any OEMs under like 280 volts. So this is a very low voltage setup. But for a lot of the intended uses, like some of your British Leyland, you know, sports cars, your VW stuff, so forth, the 76 horsepower and 120 pound-feet of torque from 0 out to 4,000 RPMs is not a bad little deal, you know. And this is, you know, the inverter, motor, and everything is under $5,000, and so, and it will outlast any of your internal combustion stuff. I mean, this thing will go, and just turn the key and go. I mean, I had the AC51, which is almost identical to this, different inverter and a little different motor set up for a higher voltage. So it was good up to 170 volts, but in the Karmann Ghia we were running a nominal of 146 volts, and instead of 650 amps it was only 500 amps. But 97,000 miles, 7.5 years, turn the key and go. So very reliable, very nice little unit, and it's a great conversion from the old internal combustion, in this case a VW bus, which had, you know, 50 some odd horsepower, and so it's 1.5 times the horsepower, almost double the torque, and it's a lighter package. Instead of being 240 pounds, it's 120 pounds. And it never will drip oil in your driveway or your garage. No valve adjustment, no points to adjust, no oil changes. And so, no, I think they're a sweet little deal. This is the motor that pretty much put the final nail in the coffin of the series wound DC motor. And so this was a great little motor. Highly recommend them. The company that makes these, highly recommend them. And I'm not sponsored. We've just used a lot of their product that either people have brought to us or that we have purchased directly from them. Either way, we've installed a lot of these, and they're great. Never had a single issue with an AC50, not one. So anyway, off camera, going to install all this, and we'll put it in the vehicle. We'll kind of get back to that point where we showed you where we were fitting the the motor mount and everything, we'll kind of get back to that point. We'll have this in the vehicle, this in the vehicle, and we'll take it from there. Got the motor assembly done, and we have our components mounted on our component board as we showed you before. We have the side panels mounted now. Like I said, they are tapped into this so that they can be removed without having to try to reach behind them to get to a bolt. And so now it's just a matter of mounting the few things that are going to go on here, some terminal strips, a relay and a fuse on this side, and our cooling reservoir on that side. After doing some careful measuring, I think what we'll do is we'll mount the coolant reservoir after we have this all mounted in the vehicle, because there's going to be real close clearance issue between this and the main disconnect. And so just going to wait and see. We've got height restrictions, we've got restriction on going down. I mean, and measuring it all, it's going to be really close, and I don't want to drill a bunch of holes and mount the thing and then have to redo it. So because this is removable, we'll mount the component board in the vehicle, then we mount the side panels once it's installed, and then we'll do that. On this side though, we're going to mount the electrical stuff, the terminal strips, relay, so forth, and this will all be pre-wired, and then the wires will be disconnected and this will be removed. And that's because this, with these installed, trying to get it in, there's no room to the side. So having these removable allows this to go in easily with the motor, and then these are added later. The reservoir we're using on this one has multiple ways you can set it up. We'll have the sight glass on this side, and we'll have the inlet on this side, and then the outlet on the bottom. So at this time, we're also going to, so these things are just laying here for the moment, they haven't been attached, but I'm going to go through the loom. So these are segregated out because we're not going to do anything with these. We've got our encoder connections, the line that goes to the Curtis 840 display, and the canvas lines. So these are the ones that will be, these are the lines that we'll be choosing from. And so a lot of these we'll use and some of them we will not. So, the red with the blue stripe, that's your 12 volt control. The orange with the white, that's for the main contactor. The blue with the white, main contactor. Things like that. The blue wire, that's our KSI. Those things we'll be using. You've got your throttle wires, you've got the brown one for the econo mode, so forth. And so we're going to segregate those out. And then the ones that we're not going to use, we're going to cut them. Some of them will be unplugged here because some of these we won't use. And then the others that we don't use, we'll cut at this same length. And so if you ever did want to use them somebody down the road, you still have something to connect to easily and then allow that feature. But there's items on here that you won't use. You're only going to use one type of throttle. So there's lines for that. some of the brake inputs and things like that, we're not going to use. And so we go through at this point and weed that out, and we don't have all this wire to deal with, only the wires that are going to be used. And then those that go over here to the main contactor and things on here will go directly there. And then the items that will go over to the terminal strips, the wires that go over here, will be routed, and so they'll go to one of these two terminal strips. So then once this is in the vehicle, all the vehicle wiring goes to these terminal strips, and that go to here, and that pretty much then completes it. So it's really just, follow your schematic diagram, and we just go down and say these are the ones we're using, these are the ones that we are not. So it's a 5-volt throttle, so we're going to use the 5-volt control wire for that. Of course, your forward and reverse, which are yellow and white wires, so the solid white wire and the solid yellow wire. White wires forward, yellow wires reverse. Always double check that. I do this all the time. I thought about getting old or something. Sometimes I'm like, did I say that right? So anyway, just very simple to do. Just do it, one at a time, methodically do it, and it doesn't take very long at all. So now we've segregated our wires. These are the ones that we separated out, I told you about a moment ago. These are the ones that we're using, okay? And so they're going this way for right now. They'll be routed and connected. These are the wires that we're not going to use. So we'll unplug these that are plugged in, and then these that are just hardwired, we'll cut them right there. So once we do that, then we're going to mount our terminal strips and so forth, and then we'll route our wire. And it goes on the back side of this component board, and then this will be ready to mount on the adapter and install in the vehicle. Here's the board wired up. So those that aren't being used will be trimmed. All this will be loomed and taken care of after it's in the vehicle. Again, I mentioned what these are for, and then the rest of them go around to the back of the board and then go to whatever. So we've got two terminal strips, our throttle, main contactor, shunt, KSI relay, and a fuse for a KSI circuit. And so there's not much there. It's very simple, as is a conversion. Very simple. And so some of these wires will be disconnected in order to allow this to be removed, and some of them will stay. So one of the things you want to do when you're doing something like this is you want to document everything. Keep track of what you have done. So I can look at these and know what they are. And when you do this all the time like we do, we keep a legend. It's the smart thing to do. We do a lot of these. They're not all the same. But just looking at this one, I know what everything is just because of the color coding of the wire. So for this is traction pack positive. This is going to our KSI input. It also goes to the DC to DC converter, and it also goes to our JLD 404 traction pack input. And then we have the positive for the main contactor, the return, 2 shunt lines, the 3 throttle lines, positive, negative, and signal. Then we have our KSI input. We have our 12-volt control signal from the controller. We have forward and reverse. We have our menu switch, our economy mode. And this is the positive for the coil on the KSI relay, and this is the negative. Boom. That's simple. You know, if you can follow a recipe, you could do this, because this is much easier than a recipe. It's just a matter of, you know, following the schematic directions. So once this is in the vehicle, then things that go to this, nothing else from the outside will go to the KSI. That signal, you know, is contained right here. It's getting power through the fuse, through the relay to the KSI input. The 12-volt control, it goes out because it's needed for other things, and so it will connect to another terminal strip that we have on our other board, the wooden board, which, you know, has the wires that go to the front and everything. And so forward and reverse, these are going to go to that wooden board because we have our reversing relay on there. So that will be where those go. And then the menu switch, of course, it connects to that other board, that the line that comes from the front of the vehicle where the menu switch is goes to. And then this goes to our relay on that board for the economy mode. And then this will go to a ignition switched 12-volt positive, and this goes to ground. Like I said, this right here will go to our DC to DC converter. These don't go anywhere else. This is the coil for the main contactor. The shunt, these will go to the terminal strip that has the wires that are coming from the front of the vehicle, and these will then go, you know, through that existing wiring to the JLD 404, measures our current in and out of the pack, which is coming through the shunt. And then of course the throttle signal, that these don't go anywhere else, they're done also. So, you know, we've done this because we were waiting on parts and everything, and we do this anyway. Everything's very modular. So we ran the wiring front to rear, and it terminates, you know, at a terminal strip and both ends, so forth. And then connect the wiring or the ignition or whatever you're connecting is connected, you know, at each end, and it makes it quick and easy. It gives you great test points, you know, to see, hey, do we have the readings that we would expect at this point? So that's just the way we do it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You can do yours however you choose to do. But we've done an awful lot of them without any issues. Turn the key and go, first time, every time. It's because we do it a very methodical way. We don't have a lot of confusing, you know, bundles of wire. We've got all these easy to identify termination points. Front of the car, back of the car, engine bay. Just makes things very simple. So anyway, the next thing then will be to remove these connections that need to be removed. They just go drop down through the hole, and then this board will be removed. This will be unplugged, and then this board, the aluminum board, will get mounted to the adapter as you saw earlier, and will be put in the vehicle. But that's for another day.